It's late at night, you've just stopped doom scrolling TikTok for the evening, and you are under the covers, snug as a bug in a rug, about to fall asleep when you hear what sounds like somebody whispering to you. Maybe they say your name. Maybe it just sounds like they're talking. But when you open your eyes, of course, nobody's there. My follower Finn had an experience much like this, and the story that they sent me is terrifying. When Finn was younger, they had some trouble falling and staying asleep. I feel like a lot of us can relate to that. But this problem is made exponentially worse by the fact that when they finally started to fall asleep, something really strange would happen in their room. They said the first time it occurred, they were around 8 or 9, and they were just falling asleep, and it felt like the mattress beside them dipped down, as though somebody sat on the bed. A moment later, they felt something stroking their arm. Thinking it was just their mom, they opened their eyes, but nobody was there in the dark. Obviously, Finn is super creeped out by this, but thinks that they're just imagining it. But as the nights go on, not only does this continue, it gets worse. In addition to feeling like something is stroking their arm, they also begin to hear whispers in the night, what sounds like a woman whispering to them. Some nights it was so vivid that they could literally feel something leaning over them, whispering in their ear, and of course they would, bolt upright and nothing and no one is there. This happened to Finn almost every single night for 2 long years, until one day it just stopped with no rhyme or reason. It's been a long time since then, and Finn had kind of forgotten about the whole thing, but they still live with their parents in that very same house. And they have 2 much younger sisters who sleep in the room right next to theirs. And one night, one of the sisters tells Finn that it's weird that their mom checks on them twice at night. And Finn's like, what do you mean? And they say, well, mom puts us to bed and she checks on us then. But then later on in the night, we can hear her stomping down the hallway really loudly, and it wakes us up when we sleep. And the sister says, when I open my eyes, mom's just standing there in the doorway, and she never says anything, and she never moves, and it's like I blink and then she's gone. The sister even calls out to her like, Mom, what are you doing? And the mother never replies. Finn, hearing this, knows that isn't their mom, because if their mom heard them talking after they were supposed to be asleep, the kids would have gotten in trouble. She would have said something, like go to bed. It's not like her to just stand there silent. The other reason Finn knows this is because their mom has loud footsteps. Like I said, she's stomping down the hallway, and Finn's room is right next to their sister's. So they hear when their mom goes to check on them, and they never hear her come back. So something masquerading as their mother is coming to check on them in the night, then just standing there. A mimic? Some kind of weird attachment? Something else? I don't know, but stay spooky, friends. This babysitter caught a ghost on video in her sister's living room, and it will leave you with nightmares.
SpongeBob night.
SpongeBob off.
Liam, come here. Liam, right now. What is happening? Okay, I'm calling your mom. Just stay right here.
That rocking chair was going crazy all on its own. Honestly, maybe the ghost was just really excited for SpongeBob night too. I genuinely think this is the scariest TikTok I've seen in a long time, and if I have to suffer, you have to suffer with me.
You can't manage that woman there, Every night, I just she can't stand up. And all you say, hey. All you say, woman. Hey. Hey. What she stand up there for? Every night, this one comes stand up right, this one don't want to move. Woman.
I can kind of see her face.
Every flipping night. Move. Every night someone comes to the and don't want to move. Like she's sick in her head.
Poster also said to anybody saying it was fake that the lady is not there during the day. As you can see right here, no creepy lady. Because the woman is always in the exact same position. I mean, in this video, he literally sprays her with the water and she doesn't react at all. Most of TikTok is saying that while this video is scary, it's probably a mannequin. But this is still total nightmare fuel. Stay spooky, friends. Okay, please tell me you guys have been seeing this TikTok too. It's from TikTok user Newell Boyce, who said that his neighbor's house across the street, which they've only been moved out of for like a year, is currently in the process of being demolished. And the other night, he says that he and his wife heard what they thought was an animal from inside of that house.
That window right behind me, I heard a smack on the window, and I look over, my wife sees it, and I see it. There's someone standing in this window, and it doesn't look good to me. When they walked away, they tore those blinds off right there. That's why you see that hole. My wife and I jumped up. I tell her, go in there and call the police now. I go over to where the window's broke. Now, I'm not thinking anything devilish at this moment. First, I don't see anything, but I hear a scratching sound. It sounds like someone digging at wood. I turn in that direction, and I see someone, and I know it's a person, just the eyes. The eyes. Plain as day. I could see someone's eyes, and I definitely seen a bridge of their nose. They were crawling on the floor towards me. So I move away from the window because I don't know what it is, and I don't want to take the chance. Just as I come past this window right here, I catch out the side of my eye someone's eye in the window. When I turned to look, it was almost like a jump scare. It got closer to the window, scared me. I took off running up the steps.
He says that before the police came, his wife came outside to see like whatever he saw, and she saw the same eye in the window.
Whatever this was, it had eyes like a human, but this shit wasn't human. Police go inside, they look around everywhere, they don't find anything. In fact, one of the officers made it a point to show me that the dust in the house hasn't even been stepped on by anyone. Moved, nothing. And now I know there's something weird going on here. Really weird.
He says if anything else happens, he will record. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this poster's account. But what do you think it was? Stay spooky, friends. I had a follower send me their mimic/doppelganger story, and it is terrifying. According to her, it all kicked off in 2021, and her husband would be gone a lot because he was in the military. He would be like out in the field for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, and during those times, she would just feel a presence in her home. At the time, this really freaked her out because she was pregnant with their first child, their daughter, and so she would light prayer candles every single night before she went to bed. It would just give her comfort. And she would just leave them lit throughout the night, and one night she wakes up and they're all out. And she thinks it's weird, but she has to go to the bathroom, so she kind of just ignores it, gets up, and as she's going to the bathroom, she hears what sounds like a woman singing from her daughter's nursery, which is literally right next to the bathroom, like singing, humming. She said it sounded like a lullaby. The nursery at the time was just being used for storage because, of course, she was pregnant. When she leaves the bathroom, like rushing to her daughter's nursery, the humming is just getting louder and louder and louder, and it doesn't stop until she actually opens up the door. Obviously, there was no one there humming. And about 2 weeks later, her husband is home from the field. Well, her husband had just finished using the bathroom. He's kind of coming out to the living room, and when he sees her, he like jumps out of his skin. He's so scared. And she like laughs. She just thinks like maybe she startled him. And he says to her, "Did you just sit down there?" And she says, "No, why?" Like she's on the couch with her cookies, she's under a blanket, she's comfy. And that's when her husband tells her that he just saw her walk into their daughter's room. And he was really confused when this happened because it looked just like her, except for some reason she had long black hair. Over the next couple of months, her husband swears this keeps happening. Like he will see the back of her head, except it's never the back of her head. She just has this long black hair, but she's always wearing the same clothes and it looks just like her. And she'll be walking into a room as he's kind of like walking past. In October of 2021, she gave birth to their first child, their daughter, and she found out shortly after that she was pregnant with their son. And nothing happens until about a month after her son is born in 2022. And of course, it was one of those times where her husband was gone in the field and she's going to the bathroom. I don't know why the bathroom is attached to so many weird happenings in this place. But as she's in there, she hears a sound coming from her daughter's nursery. Now this is really concerning because when it happened the first time, she was pregnant with her daughter. Now her daughter like lives in that room. And so she immediately gets up from the bathroom. She's going down the hall to investigate. And it sounds like there's something tapping in her daughter's room. My cat has joined us for the story, but she goes into her daughter's room. She's like, what is this tapping sound? And that's when she realizes it's the blinds in her daughter's room, like hitting the window over and over and over again, as if somebody is sitting there and like moving them back and forth. She also then notices that her daughter is like upright in her crib. Her hair is a mess. Her daughter is like freaking out, crying. So she immediately scoops her daughter up. She takes her to the bedroom. She has her other child in there. Both of the babies are crying and screaming and everybody's freaked out. And she's on the phone with her in-laws like, what do I do? Her father-in-law comes to the home to come check things out, just make sure everything's okay. And of course, nobody's there. She's kind of like, I'm sorry I called you out. I swear to you, I know what I heard. And shortly after this, that apartment, that place where they lived, actually got broken into. And so they immediately moved to a townhome, which is where the rest of this story takes place. She probably at this time wasn't thinking much about the paranormal activity and the weird mimic stuff from the last place, because they're in a new home and she had bigger fish to fry. Like, their place actually got broken into. But she would sometimes notice that her daughter's closet light would be on when she would enter into the room, and she just would ignore it. She was like, I don't really want to bring this energy into the new place. I'm not going to acknowledge it. Until one day her husband calls out to her and he says, were you just watching me go to the bathroom? And she calls back from the living room. She's like, no, I'm on my phone. I'm watching YouTube in the living room. And he says, I saw you again like last time, but this time you were peeking around the door at me while I was using the bathroom. And of course she's freaked out because her husband just saw that thing again after so much time without any activity. And so she starts cleansing the space pretty routinely, and the activity dies down again. And once again, she's like, okay, we're in the clear. And then there's an incident where they have a bunch of guests over and her daughter drops a glass, and she decides to put her daughter into her room in this new townhouse just so they can clean up the glass and she won't get hurt on any of it. Her husband is like, don't worry, I'll take care of it. You stay with her. And so she stays in the room with her daughter. They're like laying on the floor playing with toys when suddenly her daughter sits up, and she's like a year and a half, 2 years at this point. And she lets out this blood-curdling scream while looking into her closet, the same closet where the lights had been coming on occasionally, and the original person who sent me this email doesn't know why. She walks around this room and she's telling whatever this is, like, no, leave her alone, get out of here. Eventually, her daughter calms down. And at the time of sending me this email, she had said that her husband was leaving for 9 months. And she felt like the thing was going to act up again once he was gone. I didn't find this email until literally like today, and it was sent a year ago. So I'm going to email her back and ask if anything else happened. But in my original email, she asked for advice. So if you guys have any ideas for how to get rid of this thing, if she's still dealing with it, let her know down below. She'll probably read the comments. But yeah, this is such a terrifying mimic story. So what do you think? Stay spooky, friends. One of my followers sent me their scary story about the time that their best friend got possessed right in front of them. My follower's name is Finn, their friend's name is Steve. At the time, they're both in college together, and after classes one day, they go to hang out in a park. This takes place one night in November around like 8 p.m., so it was really dark outside. And for whatever reason, I guess they were feeling adventurous, they decided to do the Estes method, which is basically a method of ghost hunting in which you deprive yourself of your other senses in order to more accurately communicate with spirits. People will wear blindfolds, they'll put on noise-canceling headphones, and they'll listen to a spirit box. Now, they were broke college kids. They didn't have access to a spirit box, which makes this whole thing even weirder because all they used was white noise. So Steve is sitting there with his eyes closed and he has on these noise-canceling headphones and he can't hear anything Finn is saying. And Finn starts to ask questions like, how old are you? What's your name? But whatever this thing is responding with we or us when it answers these questions. So think like Finn asks, is anybody there? this thing responds through Steve, "We are here." This is also definitely an activity that they've done before, and so Steve is really used to doing this, and he mimics the voices of whatever it is that he hears. And so what Finn is hearing is Steve mimicking this very childlike voice, and it's really creepy off the bat. There's no light outside, it's pitch black, so the only source of light that they really have is Finn's flashlight on their phone that they're using to like illuminate Steve during this entire session. Throughout, Finn is hearing these really weird noises in the park and they're getting really uncomfortable, but as they keep going, something really weird happens. Steve pauses for a moment and then again in this childlike voice asks Finn, "Can we use his hands?" And Finn has never heard anything like this before. So they ask, "Why would you want to use Steve's hands?" And they said, "We want to clap." Finn was like, "That's not my choice. You'll have to ask Steve if that's something that you can do." And apparently Steve said yes, because all of the sudden he raises his hands and starts clapping. Like clapping and clapping and clapping, all while making this really creepy giggling noise, which Finn says is terrifying. Like they've never heard Steve giggle like this. So giggling and clapping and saying, "We clap, we clap, we clap." Finn is like trying to keep calm, keeps asking these questions when suddenly Steve rips the headphones off. And Finn is like, "Oh, thank God you're here. Like, you're not gonna believe what just happened." And Finn is giving Steve the rundown, but Steve is looking at them really strangely. Like his pupils looked weird. Something was just off about his face. And Steve is just staring at Finn like really blankly with this creepy smile on his face that just looked so unlike him. So Finn is explaining what just happened to Steve while Steve was under for the Estes method, and Steve is just looking at them with this creepy smile on his face, and he doesn't look like himself. And so Finn just kind of stops and is like, "You don't look like you. Is everything okay? Like your face doesn't look like you." And Steve isn't saying anything, and Finn is gradually getting more and more freaked out when suddenly it's like Steve just snaps out of it. You know that feeling when you're falling right as you're about to fall asleep and you like grab onto the sides of your bed? It was almost like he had that experience. He suddenly like jolts upright and he's looking around and he's like, "Why am I sitting up? I don't remember doing that." And Finn is just looking at him like tears in their eyes, like, "Are you joking me right now? Like, please tell me you're playing a prank." And Steve has literally no idea what just happened. No memory of the last several minutes. Steve was obviously also really concerned. The two of them just book it out of there and head to the nearest street lamp where they're in the light before eventually heading home. And this isn't really something Steve would do as like a prank. They've done these Estes method sessions before. And Steve has never done anything like this. And Finn just ends off the email by saying, to this day, it's one of the paranormal experiences that freaks them out the most. And they can just remember exactly how Steve's face looked when he was just staring at them and giggling and clapping and smiling. I don't know. This one is really, really, really terrifying. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about it. Stay spooky, friends. I have an update for the insane mimic story that one of my followers sent me, and it is so terrifying. If you didn't see the first part, I'm going to give you a quick summary. My follower had been experiencing what seemed like a mimic in multiple homes, something that sounded like it was humming from her daughter's nursery, something that presented itself to her husband as her, like as my follower, but with long dark hair. And it was all happening in one apartment that they then moved out of, and in their new townhome, it started happening too. And where we left off in part one was that at the end of that email that I was sent by my follower, she said that she was really nervous about her husband being gone for 9 months with the military because she felt like whatever this was waiting for him to leave. The problem is that she sent me that email a year ago and I just found it like last week. So I reached out to her and asked her for an update, and what she gave me is crazy. A month into her husband leaving for 9 months, I mean, she is just feeling really nervous. She said the separation anxiety is kicking in hard. One night, she wakes up around midnight, and when she wakes up, she was so hot when she was sleeping, there was like a puddle of sweat beneath her, but the house is freezing. And she's like, whoa, this is like way colder than it usually is. Not weird for her to sweat during the night, but it is weird for the house to feel this freezing. And she gets up from bed to go adjust the thermostat. And as she's going downstairs, she ends up falling down like 4 stairs. The weird part is that she hears something giggling after this from her daughter's room. She thought maybe her daughter heard her falling down the stairs and was like giggling at her, so she pokes her head into her daughter's room. Her daughter's dead asleep. And something I mentioned in the last video is that her daughter's closet light kept turning on its own. And when her mom looks in that closet, the light is on. She ends up lighting a prayer candle for her daughter, and as she goes to check the thermostat, it says it's 72, and she's just really confused why it is so cold in her house. She really just doesn't know what to do, and so she reaches out to someone she describes as a lovely medicine woman who practices herbalism. Basically, she gives her the rundown of what's going on. I think that the person who sent me this email also sells like crystals and stuff, so I think they're like business acquaintances. But anyways, this woman says that she's going to do a candle reading for my follower. And when the candle reading comes back, basically the herbal medicine lady is like, somebody put evil eye on you. She ends up doing some things, including an egg cleanse, and eventually gets like 6 months of reprieve from whatever this thing is. It seems like this thing just comes and goes at random. Things have been chill for months. So one night, she's laying in bed, just scrolling on her phone through TikTok, and you know how it is when your eyes just start getting really heavy, and she's kind of falling asleep when suddenly it feels like her entire body just starts shaking. She has this cold chill run right down her back, and she feels like she needs to open her eyes again. And she's laying on her husband's side of the bed where she's been sleeping while he's been away, and as she turns over, she sees what looks like a woman in a long white dress with matted hair staring back at her. And it's like hovering in the air staring at her, she says, and it had these like long talon claws. And she is completely terrified. It is dark in the room at this point. It's just like her and her cell phone. So she grabs her phone, turns on the flashlight, and of course, when she shines the light where she saw this woman, nothing's there. And she says this thing that almost seems like her protection mantra, which is, if you are not from the light, be gone from my sight. And it seems like this always gives her a little bit of peace. So she says it, and then she tries to go back to bed. Somehow she falls asleep, but of course, something wakes her up. This time, it's what sounds like somebody whispering. And so she opens her eyes, and on the side of the bed, crouching in front of her, is the woman in the long white dress with the matted hair. Except this time there were no like distinguishable features. She was just a silhouette. And this woman whispers, "Now you see me." And the woman who sent me this email literally grabs her iPhone and chucks it at this lady. Of course, doesn't hit anything. The phone just goes flying to the other side of the room. She was terrified. Did not sleep in her bedroom again after that. Decided to sleep in the living room. In the month that followed, a lot of weird things did happen, but nothing to that extent. And then what's really strange is that she ends off the email by saying that when her husband got back, they ended up separating. But what's interesting is since then, since she separated from her husband, nothing has happened ever again. She said, "I think whatever it was attached to my husband, not me or my children, and it didn't like how strong of a presence I made in his life. But who knows?" No matter what, I'm really thankful for this update, and it's just really weird because her husband was the one who saw what looked like her with long black hair, and then she sees this thing with like a long white dress and like matted hair. Was it this thing that was like attached to her husband, or so she thinks? I don't know. You guys are gonna have to let me know what you think about this one, but so happy to finally have an end to this story. Stay spooky, friends. I got another email from a follower who had a scary mimic story, and the subject of the email was, "I heard my sister's voice, but she was miles away." Off to a terrifying start. My follower's name is Stacy, her sister's name is Caroline, and Caroline is the older sister who just went off to grad school. Now she's going to grad school out of state, and it's been really bittersweet because she and Stacy are really, really close, but they keep up through kind of constant FaceTiming throughout the day and texting and stuff. But ever since Caroline moved out of state, Stacy has been experiencing something that sounds just like her, but obviously Caroline is nowhere around. So this takes place about 3 weeks ago when Stacy had just gotten back to her city from visiting their parents for the holidays. But it's Stacy's like first Monday back at work, right? And she gets home from her shift and her phone rings and she looks down and it's her sister calling. Now, usually when her sister is going to call her, she'll shoot her like a preemptive like, "Hey, are you free to FaceTime" text. But Stacy picks up, and when she does, the FaceTime screen is just black. Like Caroline isn't there, like something's wrong with the phone, you know what I mean? And Stacy's like saying her name and she's about to hang up when she hears Caroline's voice come through the phone and say the words, "Come here." Stacy immediately, like, her reaction is that this must be a prank. Like, Caroline thinks she's being funny. So she tries to call back. She tries to text her. She's not getting a response. Stacy's not really taking this seriously. She's not, like, concerned or anything. She ends up going to bed. And she wakes up in the morning to a text from Caroline that said, "Sorry, I missed your call. I fell asleep early last night." And Caroline's like, haha, very funny. Yes, when I called you back because you called me and whispered, "Come here," all creepy. But Caroline sent her call log and she had never called Stacy. She obviously thought it was weird, but it was 2 days later that things got much weirder. She's just in her kitchen cleaning up for the day. It's like 9 p.m. as she's doing this. She's winding down the house for the night. And she hears what sounds like footsteps in the foyer, as if somebody had just walked into the house, but she hadn't heard the front door close. She lives alone, but she puts down her cleaning supplies. She goes and she looks at the front door and she looks at the foyer and nobody's there. And as she is about to turn around and go back to the kitchen and get back to her cleaning, she hears her sister, Caroline, say just the word "hi." Like, it was her voice, unmistakably. She hears Caroline say "hi." And she's like looking around like, did Caroline come from out of state to surprise me? Like, is this another prank? But Caroline is nowhere to be seen. She doesn't even live in state. In fact, their time zones are so different that Caroline is long asleep for the night and Stacy can't even call her about this. But the next day, Stacy calls Caroline and Caroline is pretty creeped out by this. And she's the one who kind of explains the concept of a mimic to Stacy. You know, that mimics are like a paranormal entity that can mimic you, mimic a loved one, and sound just like them to lure you into a false sense of security. And Stacy thinks this stuff is interesting, but she's certainly not like in panic mode, thinking there's a mimic in her house. But Caroline is taking this pretty seriously, and she's like, listen, this really isn't something to mess with. Like, don't reply to it, don't engage with it, just ignore it, and it'll go away. Well, that weekend, Stacy goes over to a friend's house, and she gets home pretty late in the evening. And she says that the minute that she stepped into her apartment, everything just felt a little strange. I don't know, the energy of the place was just off, and she's walking through, and she doesn't really know why she feels so on edge, but she's doing a walkthrough of her apartment. And when she gets to her bedroom, her bedding is all rumpled, like somebody had been sleeping in her bed. And at this point, Stacy isn't thinking like something paranormal is going on. She thinks somebody has been in her house sleeping in her bed. So she calls the police, and as she's just literally huddling in her bedroom, waiting for the cops to get there, she notices that this little tiny like ceramic cat that her sister had given her, like a knickknack one year, on her nightstand, it's always just been there. She notices that it has been turned so that it's facing the wall instead of like out like it always is. But the cops do come and check it out, and they totally like understand why she found it really creepy, but there's no sign of forced entry. It doesn't look like anyone's actually been in her apartment. And she just feels like she is blowing everything so out of proportion at this point. She feels crazy. She feels bad for calling the cops out, and she just wants to go to bed. How she slept in that place after this, I honestly don't know. And as she is falling asleep, from outside of her bedroom window, she can hear her sister's voice saying, "Let me in a really soft voice, like, let me in, right outside of the window. And she thought this was interesting the next day because that was the direction that the little ceramic cat had been turned to face. And she was so terrified by this experience. I feel so bad for her. She ended up just like crying her eyes out and sleeping on the couch that night, like as far away from her bedroom as she could be. And she didn't really know what to do or what to think. Like, was the apartment haunted? Did she have this attachment because it sounded like her sister? She obviously talked to Caroline about it. I mean, this is so beyond like maybe her sister was playing a prank or something one night. You know what I mean? Like, this has gotten really, really, really scary for Stacy. Stacy said in the email, "I realized later that the first call might have been sort of an invitation. It said, 'Come here,' like it wanted me to go somewhere with it. When I didn't do what it said, it tried to come inside itself, outside my window, saying, 'Let me in, let me in.' I know this sounds insane. It is insane, but it's what I experienced." Stacy hasn't always been like a staunch believer in the paranormal, but this has truly gotten her, and she just thinks the best thing to do is to move out of her place. So she's spending a lot of time packing up her apartment. I'm also sorry for the insane noises you've been hearing throughout this story. I have a stage 5 clinger in my lap. And as she's moving out, she just feels like the activity is getting somehow even worse. Lights are flickering overhead as she's packing up boxes. She'll swear she's put something into one area of the house so that she can pack it, and it just disappears. But she knows she is never spending another night in this apartment. So she's literally packing up the place. She decides to leave around 10 p.m. She packs up an essentials bag. She's going to go stay at a friend's house. She's not sleeping in this apartment, and good for her. However, this entity did not seem very happy about this, because as she gets closer and closer to leaving, she swears it just feels like something is staring at her. And right as she's about to leave, she hears what sounds like footsteps running down the hallway of her apartment building, and her sister's voice saying, "Come here, come here, come here." And her heart is pounding, my heart is pounding. She has to call a friend, like a 6'5" guy friend, to come and get her, and he does. And of course, nothing is in the hallway and nobody is there, but that is it. She's like, movers can handle this, I'm not going back. She ends up eventually getting moved out. All of the stuff gets put into storage for the time being, and she's kind of trading off her time, spending the nights with her friends in the city and going home to stay with her family on the weekends. And she's just doing this until she can find another place. But she could never go back to that apartment after what happened to her there. And ever since, she hasn't heard her sister's voice. She hasn't really had anything paranormal happen to her. So hopefully whatever this is attached to that apartment and will stay put, because oh my God. She says at every little noise, she still jumps thinking that it's this thing again and she's going to hear her sister's voice. But as of now, it seems like whatever it was is attached to that apartment, and I really, really hope it leaves her alone. That is one of the craziest mimic stories I've ever heard. And so terrifying. Literally, the phone call in the beginning felt like the plot of a horror movie. Stay spooky, friends. One of my followers sent me her email about the time that her Instagram stalker showed up to her workplace. And it is like the epitome of a let's not meet scenario. My follower's name is Cass, and when this takes place around 6 years ago, she says she's like 16, 17. And she's working a 12-hour shift this day. So during her break, she is just scrolling through different social medias, Facebook, Instagram, the works, when she sees in her notifications that some random guy has liked 10 to 15 of her photos and left really inappropriate comments on them. Things like "so gorgeous" and "wow, sexy." And obviously Cass is really freaked out by this, immediately blocks this person, and just goes on with her day. I mean, this is just something where that was creepy, and you block and you move on because you don't want to think about it for too long. So she's going on with her day, and she actually works at a salon, so she's just washing up some things in the back when one of her coworkers comes back from their lunch break and asks her, "Hey, do you know this guy?" and goes on to describe like a man, their hair color, eye color, skin color. And Cass is like, "No, not off the top of my head." And her coworker is like, "Somebody was asking for you out front." Like, somebody walked up to the coworker on their lunch break and said, "Do you work at the salon?" Coworker says yes. This guy asks, "Do you work with a girl named Cassie?" And the coworker's like, "Yeah." And the guy asks if Cassie has red hair and if they were friends. And again, the coworker's like, "Yeah," but like it's creeping her out, and she ends up going inside. Well, all of this takes place in Australia. And as it turns out, this man also told the coworker that he had flown from Melbourne to where they were, which is like a 10-hour drive or a 1.5-hour flight, to come and see Cass. And Cass just had a really weird feeling, and she went to look at the Instagram profile of the person she had blocked earlier that day, shows it to her coworker, and the coworker's like, "Yeah, that was him." This man who had been commenting on all of these Instagram photos earlier in the day had shown up to her place of work. Don't know how he figured that out. Like, did he know beforehand and he found her social media because he knew her from her place of work? Or was it the opposite? Like, did he find her Instagram and then do some creepy cyber stalking and then find out where she worked. I don't really know. She's super creeped out. I mean, she calls her mom. This is clearly very, very, very serious, but the guy is long gone. And in truth, I'm sure this was a lesson for the coworker as well, that like you don't tell when people are asking about your coworkers and stuff, like don't say anything, you know, especially if they are minors, like in this situation. But the manager of the salon takes this super seriously. They are trying to figure out who this guy is, where he is, and just nowhere to be seen, like has left the building. But this is all happening on the same day. Cass has to go to the bathroom. And she's really freaked out to do this because there's not a bathroom in their salon. They work in like a mall, it seems like, or a shopping center or something, and she has to go use the bathroom. Her manager tells her to take her phone with her and to always stay in big crowds, but I'm just sitting here like, why is no one taking the child to the bathroom? A creepy man has just been in the vicinity and nobody is looking after her, but I digress. It happened. This was like 6 years ago. But she goes to the bathroom, and when she comes back out, the guy is standing there in the bathroom hall, and she just freezes, and she's like, oh my God, like, is my life flashing before my eyes? Should I scream? Should I run? Like, she just froze. It's a secluded area. All she can think to do is to start backing up into the bathroom. And the guy tries talking to her like, why are you walking away from me, beautiful? Like, I came to see you. He apparently says, I've been looking at your profile for a while now, and it doesn't take much to be able to find out what state you live in or where you work when you have the right connections. And Cass just literally goes into the bathroom, locks the door, and calls security. And I mean, the minute that she has security on the phone, the guy takes off. Security comes, and I mean, police have to be called, and she has to give a statement. And she said at first like they weren't taking her seriously, but her boss backed her up, and the cops eventually seemed to realize how serious this was. From that point on, she was really, really vigilant in this job and like very on edge, but she never saw this guy again. Nothing ever happened after that, thank the Lord. She says that now she is a kid, and so she keeps all of her social media private because she just cannot fathom something like that ever happening to her again, thinking that it was this easy for this guy to find her place of work and stuff like that, when she always felt she'd been pretty careful with what she posted online. It just scared the crap out of her. So for her safety and her baby's safety, she's not public on social media anymore. She ends off this email by telling you guys to set your profiles private if you can, and just to be careful with what you post no matter what, because you never know who is online watching you. So stay safe and stay spooky out there, friends. This was a crazy story. So I got sent a really crazy ghost picture, and I don't really know what to make of it. So let me give you the context of the photos. They're from a follower of mine named Ashley, who emailed them to me saying that she was just going through old pictures of her pet geckos today when she realized she caught something in the background of one of them that definitely wasn't there. So here's a normal one of these pictures. It's just her pet gecko hanging out. Here's another normal one. She just included these so I would know what kind of photo she was taking, because this photo is where it all starts going downhill. Who are you? Ashley says she never edited these. She was alone in her room while taking them, and also that she took them on a Samsung Galaxy S8. She doesn't know what to make of this except that that is a ghost. And to me, that is like clear as day a person. I know that there's a phenomena called pareidolia where humans will see faces where there is nothing. So maybe this is an example of that. But to me, that just looks like a person. And a person very clearly like trying to get in the photo. Like this little guy is just so happy and so proud in this photo. Look at him, the cutest little lizard ever. That is someone photobombing. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's just a person? Where did they come from? I don't know. This one is creeping me out. So let me know what you think. And stay spooky, friends. I'm back with another follower scary story today, and this one is paranormal. Now, in the email, my follower says that the farm is located in Namibia, and it's incredibly old and belongs in her family. Her father is the current owner. They don't live on the farm, but the people who work on it, who work for her dad, do live on the farm, and it's like she said, 10 kilometers outside of town. There are 4 graves on the property, the oldest one dating back to 1903. Remember this for later. So this follower is named Danielle, and when she's 14, her high school has a youth camp, which normally they would rent out like a campground or something for, but Danielle's father comes forward and he's like, you guys can just use the farm. It's free of charge. We have a campsite. So that's what they do, and it works out really well. But when Danielle gets to the farm, which she's obviously very familiar with, I mean, she's grown up on it essentially, she said that the energy was just really off. Dark, she said. And again, she's used to this farm. Sometimes it gets a little spooky, but this is like a different level. It was very heavy. She's staying in a bungalow with like 6 other girls, and she says the first night she was just really on edge. Like nothing happened, but it felt like something was going to. Then on a second night, they go on a hike of the property. They were learning about stars and constellations, and it's a beautiful night, and she's kind of like starting to forget about all of this, I don't know, weird energy she's feeling. But then part of the way through the hike, she feels like something is watching her, and she's looking around thinking maybe it's like a wild animal or something, and she just sees nothing. But you know that gut feeling, like you know something is watching you. So she's looking around. Eventually she looks up into a tree, and that's where she sees a woman in the tree line, just staring back at her. And her hair was matted. She was wearing like an old style nightgown, and she was just up in the tree, staring back at her. Danielle says her eyes still haunt me. They were bulging, like she could see right through me. And Danielle just didn't know what to do. She didn't want to like draw attention to it. She didn't want to scare anybody, so she just grabs onto one of her friends and she stays quiet until they're back at the campfire later that night. And then she basically has a panic attack, breaks down, and tells everyone what happened. All of her friends understand why she's freaking out, but one friend in particular, who's very familiar with the farm, says, I can't figure out who that woman would be, because they're very familiar with, once again, the 4 graves on the property. Like sometimes they would hear babies crying at night on the farm, and it wouldn't be that surprising because 2 of the graves on the property were that of a 5-day-old baby and a 3-month-old baby who passed away back in the 50s. Super sad. After this though, terrifyingly, Danielle kept seeing this woman everywhere, all over the farm, constantly watching her with these like bulging eyes. She said she would see her peeking around corners at her or just lingering in the dark. And oh my God, the peeking around the corner with the bulging eyes, absolutely not. Here's where things get really weird. About a month after this camp ends, Danielle ends up going to what she believes at the time is the oldest grave on the property, belonging to a 23-year-old man, and it sits beneath an acacia tree. They wanted to clean up this grave, make it nice for this person, and as they're sort of sprucing up this area, that's when Danielle finds like a slab on the ground, another grave marker. When she uncovers it, that's when she discovers the 4th grave. That belonging to a woman unnamed but called a beloved daughter and wife. There was a name, to be clear, but it just was like long defaced because of the age of the stone slab. They could also see she was born in Cape Town, but that's when something clicks for Danielle, that she thinks that the woman she's been seeing is the woman from this grave, and she's been following her around because Danielle's been walking over this grave every day for years. Nobody knew it was there. And it gets even crazier because when Danielle cleaned this area up, made the grave pretty and nice, she never saw the woman again. To this day, she doesn't know if the woman was trying to reveal herself to ask for help or if she was just trying to be creepy. But either way, the story is terrifying. Stay spooky, friends. I feel like some of the scariest paranormal stories that I hear are when people are like camping overnight in the woods. And I got a follower scary story about the time that this follower went camping and encountered a ghost on the road. Her name is Chloe, and she starts out the email by saying she's had paranormal experiences most of her life, and that not much freaks her out, which is why this story really stands out. So back in 2021, Chloe had just gotten engaged to her fiance. They want to go on a trip to celebrate, and since they live near a national park and they love camping, they decide to head out. Chloe takes the first shift of driving, but as it gets later, she lets her fiance take over since he's just a better driver and she deserves passenger princess status. It's completely dark out now and they're on a one-way, single-lane road. Like no offshoots, no nothing. At one point, Chloe looks in the rearview mirror and she sees that there's this white truck behind them. One she absolutely had not noticed until that very moment. Just a very large pickup truck, and they just thought like, wow, we must be tired, didn't notice this truck, whatever. But then the truck starts behaving really, really aggressively. Like the driver behaves aggressively. The truck wasn't going full sentient. I mean, maybe it was, honestly. You listen to this and let me know. The truck starts like flashing their lights, honking the horn, revving their car. And it's really weird. Like the truck almost is swerving like it wants to go around them. But since it's a one lane, one way road, it can't. But also Chloe and her partner were going like 10 miles over the speed limit. There was no reason for this person to start acting like this. At some points, it's so bad that her fiance literally has to step on the gas so that they don't get hit by this truck. The two of them are really scared. I mean, they are alone in the middle of the woods on a one-lane road. Nobody is going to be able to come help them. And it's like, is this person experiencing road rage? Like, what's going on? Are they drunk? They thought they were in danger. And honestly, I would think the same. All of a sudden, the truck's headlights just go out. Chloe immediately turns around because her fiance is keeping his eyes on the road. And the truck is gone, not swerved off the road, not taking a detour because there's no detour to take. The lights went out and it disappeared. It wasn't like the car ran out of gas and rolled to a stop. It wasn't like this truck driver was trying to scare them more. The car disappeared into the night. Chloe and her fiance just have chills down their spines. He's not a big believer in the paranormal, but in that moment, he knew something was up. They just drove in silence for a long time, trying to listen for the truck, assuming that the truck maybe would catch up with them at some point, and they didn't see something paranormal, but it never did. The truck was behind them, and then it wasn't, as if it just disappeared. Maybe the truck was sentient, because my follower ends the email by saying, some people might try to explain this away, but my fiance and I know what we saw, and we both believe a vengeful spirit took the shape of a truck and was attempting to attack us. It may sound crazy, but I will say it was one of the scariest moments of my life. The way my heart was in my stomach, the panic in my fiance's voice. I'm eternally grateful no one got hurt, and I will go to the ends of the earth believing what we saw that night. Luckily, they arrived to the campground safe and sound with no injuries and enjoyed their trip. But what do you think they saw? Was this a ghost truck or something else? Stay spooky, friends. Let's watch some scary videos you guys have tagged me in. My neighbor invited me to his house, but I'm not sure what to expect. I guess start expecting creepy little hands to come out of some mini doors. Okay, 3:25 a.m. We got the dogs barking. We do listen to dogs when dogs are freaked out, but that does just appear to be a woman in a white dress.
I'm pushing carts out here in the middle of the night, and I got kind of lost.
Bro ended up in Silent Hill. The lady in the white dress was creepy, but I think was just a person. He definitely ended up in Silent Hill, though. What? Terrifying. Empty space in a kitchen. What did we see? I missed it. Sorry. That is just a donkey, I think. Yeah, that's just a little guy. I don't know. These were weird. This scary story from a follower sounds an awful lot like a mimic to me. So maybe don't watch this one at night because it's really creepy. So the story comes from my follower Callie, who grew up in this house with her little sister and her parents. She prefaces by saying that she's a teenager and her sister is around 6 when this takes place. She also says that her mother has always been psychic, aka just seeing things that no one else can. And our entire creepy story starts when Callie's little sister starts complaining to their mother that she sees something in her bedroom closet. Her mom comes to check it out. Of course, nothing and no one is there. She just thinks that it's the case of her child having an overactive imagination. Well, 3 nights later, her mom is going downstairs in the middle of the night to go get a glass of water when she sees something. Specifically, something that was under their living room couch that looked like a dark mist with sunken black eyes. Callie's mom closed her eyes, started reciting a prayer, and when she opened them again, the thing was gone. And nothing happens after this for 3 months until suddenly this thing shows up again, but in a much creepier way. Because one night, Callie's little sister falls asleep in her room watching TV, and Callie is just out like a light. She said she sleeps really heavy, nothing can wake her up. And the next morning, her little sister comes to her and is like, Dad tucked me in last night, but something about him seemed off. He looked really weird. Whatever this thing was that looked like her father was like him, but not quite. Very strange. Like, it looked like her dad, but like if somebody had taken her dad and rearranged all his features just a little bit off. It just really disturbed her. Lo and behold, her father confirms he never came in her room that night. No one did. After this, really weird stuff started happening in the home, knocking on the window, even on the parents' window. And it gets bad enough that one of Callie's mom's friends comes over to cleanse the house of this bad energy. Callie's mom is helping out with this. Afterwards, they kind of just hang out and gab and talk. But then as the friend is leaving, Callie's mom feels this like stinging pain on her arm. And she moves her shirt and there's this gigantic scratch down her forearm. This is not like a story that happened years and years and years ago either. Callie still lives in this house with her family to this day and says that weird things are still happening sporadically. She says that her little sister's closet is one of the most uncomfortable places in the house for her to be in. And she always feels like somebody is watching her in this closet. She said it doesn't feel like this thing is like infesting the home, but it certainly doesn't feel like it's gone. And she wants to ask you guys for advice if anybody knows what they should do for this situation with something that clearly appears to be mimicking the parents for the children. She just feels scared in her own home, and so does her sister. So if you guys have any advice, let her know down below. And stay spooky, friends. I can't believe how many people said that Dear David is the scariest creepypasta they've ever read. Because I wouldn't have categorized it as a creepypasta, but I totally understand why people would. So I'm going to do my skincare and tell you all about it. When you Google Dear David, you might see this movie poster from a 2023 film called Dear David, but the movie was actually inspired by the tweets. The tweets began in August of 2017 on an artist named Adam Ellis's Twitter page. It all kicks off with, so my apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child and he's trying to kill me. He started appearing in dreams, but I think he's crossed over into the real world now. The first time I saw him, I was experiencing sleep paralysis and saw a child sitting in the green rocking chair at the foot of my bed. And this illustration of what he saw became a character known as Dear David. Because in the same thread, Adam says, I had another dream a few nights later where I was in a library and a girl came up to me and said, you've seen Dear David, haven't you? What followed was a haunting that took place over multiple months, with Adam chronicling every single moment on Twitter. And I think we all remember where we were on the fateful day that this photo was dropped. Because at a certain point, Dear David went from just speaking to Adam in his dreams to fully manifesting in real life. If you've never looked through the full Twitter story, I cannot recommend it enough. It's full of terrifying stories and videos and illustrations, all from this artist who chronicled the haunting in real time. This green rocking chair video, I remember seeing it for the first time and like being so scared I couldn't sleep that night. I really do miss these days in Twitter's like prime, at least to me, and the alternate reality games and projects like this that would come out on it. It's not really a space for that anymore, but at the time it was the most incredible medium for getting across your stories. I did many a video on Dear David back in the day, but if you really want me to go through the whole thing again, I will. Although I did a video on the Dear David movie last year, and really and truly, I think the boy just needs to rest. But I understand why it is so many people's scariest, creepy internet experience. Like, it was huge at the time, really ahead of its time as well. Just so freaking good. Man, I miss Dear David. I'll have all the products I use today listed down below, but stay spooky, friends.